Happy Hump Day. It's May, and typically May means it's hardball season. And in the Van Stratton homes, it's a busy time of the year. I remember last year just being overwhelmed with trying to get 3 children to 3 different parks and 3 different communities and wondering how in the world are we going to do this? And I remember talking to my wife, why are we doing this? Next year we've got to slow things down. We've got to not be so busy. And here we are, May 2020. There's no hardball season. In a sense, we're forced to slow things down and rest and be still. Yet it's hard for us. Even in the midst of a pandemic, we strive to busy ourselves. I remember within the first week of quarantine, there was a meme that appeared on Facebook. It said something along the lines of this: if that by the end of this quarantine, you haven't learned a new skill, started your side hustle, or gained some more knowledge, you're not lacking time, you're lacking discipline. In a sense, there was this guilt that if you're not doing something in the midst of this quarantine, then you're not disciplined. If you're not growing, if you're not rolling up your sleeves and getting busy, then you lack discipline. It's interesting that even in the midst of a pandemic, there's this temptation to busy ourselves, to roll up our sleeves and to become heroes and just get busy. As I think about this time of quarantine, the words that come to my mind are the words from Psalm 46, words spoken by God to the psalmist: "Be still and know that I am God." It's from Psalm 46, verse 10. And Psalm 46 begins with the psalmist recognizing that it's God who provides his refuge and his strength and his protection. The psalmist speaks about facing all different kinds of calamities. Whether it's the waters rising or the earth shaking, the psalmist finds his security, his hope, his refuge in God. And by the end of the psalm, he's reminded again, as there's this temptation to worry and to be afraid of what's happening around you, God reminds the psalmist to be still and know that I am God. But what does it mean to be still? Be still comes from the Hebrew word rapha, which means to be weak, to surrender, to let go. So in the midst of calamity, in the midst of struggle, it appears as though God is telling the psalmist to simply give up, to surrender and do nothing. But that's not what be still means. To be still is to surrender and to let go and to hand the struggle, to hand the trial over to God. Because there's 2 commands: the command to be still and the command to know. To know God and to know who God is. And what does the psalmist know about God? See, the psalmist remembers and knows that God is the one that rescued his people, the Israelites, from Pharaoh in Egypt. The psalmist knows that it was God who provided for his people in the wilderness, providing water from a rock and manna from the heavens. And what do we know about God? What do we remember? What do we recall God doing for us? See, we know that God sent his Son for us. We know that we were in a situation that we could do nothing about. Our sins separated us from God. No matter how hard we tried, no matter how hard we worked at it, we could roll up our sleeves and work at it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There was nothing we could do. And yet God sent his Son to pay the penalty for our sins, that we might be able to enter into a relationship with him. See, there was nothing that we could do to mend our relationship with God, yet surrender our sins to Jesus Christ. Friends, in the midst of this pandemic, can I encourage you to hear these words from our God? Be still and know that I am God. To the parent who is struggling to get their child to complete their online studies, be still and know that I am God. To the individual who is overwhelmed with the headlines that appear to contradict themselves, be still and know that I am God. To the individual who feels as though the walls in their home are beginning to close in on them, be still and know that I am God. To the individual who struggles with guilt, who is feeling as though they need to do more because they haven't started their side hustle or learned a new skill, be still and know that I am God. To those of us who are concerned about the future and are worrying about what the new normal might look like, be still and know that I am God. In Jesus Christ, we have hope every day. I trust you enjoyed this hope for Hump Day.